My name is Matthew Salenger. I am an artist and architect. I do public art as well as studio art and all kinds of different buildings. I remember being 6 years old and finding out that human beings designed buildings, and I just knew I wanted to be involved with that. And as I got older and I got into high school, I got into art so much more that I decided I wanted to be an artist and just do that all the time. And to be honest, my family kind of pushed me, not my parents, but my grandparents kind of pushed me into something that was going to be more of a legitimate job that was going to make money. And so I kept bouncing back and forth between the two. Certainly when I was in undergrad, there was a point when I stopped doing architecture and I just did fine art for a couple of years, and I was taking 4 studios at a time, which is a ridiculous amount of studios. And I loved it. All I did was paint and draw, and it was mostly figurative work for 2 years. That was really important to me. When I was in grad school for architecture, my wife was in grad school for art, for sculpture. We both worked for a German artist architect, Gert Stockmann. He had done several public art projects as well as studio art as well, so it was a really good model for us to learn from and be inspired by. There's a lot of benefits to being involved in both architecture and art. Architecture is supposed to be the combination of art and science together. I think there's a lot of truth to that. What we try to do is really try to use all the different mindsets that we bring to things and combine all of those together in everything that we do. There's also, of course, the engineering side to architecture. The engineering side and knowing how buildings go up and having all of that training is very helpful for projects, particularly like this one in Chandler, because there was a lot of engineering that was involved in making this work. So having that mindset helps us actually work a little more fluidly through the public art process. But there are a lot of other aspects to both that are really interesting. Architects also have a lot of training in being a kind of central quarterback on a project that's dealing with a lot of different kinds of people, different engineers, different consultants, different clients. With the training that we've had in both fields, it lends itself to a little bit more fluidity in the process. When we get really involved in studio artwork, and it's only studio artwork, we lose that fluidity a little bit for ourselves. So having and keeping that balance is, for us, one of the most beneficial kind of activities that we can do. The way that our studio started was my wife and I coming out of grad school and wanting to find a way to practice with, working together while having jobs. And we very quickly gravitated towards public art as a way to have a kind of side gig, in a way, that was an outlet for what work we really wanted to do while we were doing other interesting work, but in one field. We wanted to reach as many people as possible. I think every artist does. And to us, that was kind of a natural progression for us with our training. Since then, it really has kind of changed and blossomed. We've always been interested in connecting people to nature, but we've gotten a lot more oriented around understanding the science behind that and the background and the evolution of human beings towards making that work the best for us that we can. The other aspect of public art in the world is that it is a big area of patronage. There's actually the ability for tax money to be used for the purposes of artwork, which is really special. And one of the main questions that we asked ourselves at the beginning when we started doing public art was, why would people feel the need to spend tax money on art? And when we asked, the first time we were working on a public art project where we asked this in 2007, the answers of what people told us were that, yeah, the artwork is going to go on this building, but the building is not speaking to our community. It doesn't speak to who we are as individuals. It doesn't talk about our value system. And that's when it clicked for us that public art needs to be that connection piece between the way we work as architects now and the way communities want to have those connections with the community and nature. And a lot of times our work utilizes that connection with nature in ways that are very studied and precise, using scientific data to talk about what are the most calming effects or what are the most impactful dramatic effects that you can make with a piece of art. We try to approach every project by really looking carefully at where it's going, but more importantly to us, who it is for and what the community is, and we try to pull the community's values into the work that we create. Well, this project in Chandler is at the Fire and Police Training Facility. In this case, they were asking for shade, and so, that requires something that's horizontal. The space itself is long and linear. It doesn't really lend itself for something in the middle of the space that's blocking it off. It's a really interesting project in that the people that work here are generally very intense and have this really strong call to help other people out. And so we focused on the idea of duty. What we wanted to do is create something for a space that is meant to be welcoming and softening and more for families and gatherings than any part of the training. And so one of the things that I study a lot is biophilic design and ways in which various different environments can actually lower your blood pressure and slow your heart rate down and calm your mind and give you a more pleasant attitude. And so there are actually scientific studies that show how that happens. And so we included a lot of that into the design of the pattern work that goes into this project, and the shapes and forms as well. And so the whole idea is to combine these ideas about duty with nature. And one of the things that we found that was really fascinating when we looked at the badges that fire personnel and police personnel wear, they actually often include imagery of nature. And so the pattern that we created actually starts with the badges and transforms them into a botanical kind of pattern. And we call it the nature of duty, so that people that come here can get a sense of the pride that everybody has in this sense of duty, but also really think about it in terms of being a part of an ecosystem or being part of nature and being really calm and happy for what they are called to do. This project is pretty large. The wall was extremely long. I think it's 85 feet long, the major part of it. And we were able to stretch the budget out in such a way that we could get a piece that's basically going to be 60 feet wide in 3 pieces that are each about 17 feet wide. So it can take up a lot of room, break down the scale of the wall, and make for a more inviting environment. One of the things that I enjoy the most in my work is actually working with people that get to work with the materials to put it together. I love working with fabricators. I look to their wisdom. I constantly ask them to teach me, what are the best ways to improve this, to reduce the cost. I ask the engineers the same thing. So the engineers figure out how it attaches to a wall. I send that to the fabricator, and the fabricator and the engineers and I have conversations about how to actually make that work more efficiently for fabrication and installation. And we work back and forth, and there are times that we have to do a lot of creative problem solving as issues arrive, which they almost always do. And one of the coolest things is when you come up with this really ornate pattern that has a lot of work put into it, that gets water jet cut by computer. So you have it as a computer drawing, you send it to somebody that can water jet cut that out of steel, and then it just appears. And on this case, we did it all on the computer. In some cases, I've actually worked by hand and then seen those hand drawings come out cut by the computer. It's really cool to be able to see that, especially when it's something as big as this. The last time I did a project like this, it's in Hawaii, where I'm from. It's like a mile from my high school. So it had a similar form, but instead of coming out from the wall this way, the point was the thing that kind of came out. That piece was somewhere in that range, 2,000, 3,000 pounds. And I actually helped them put it on the wall. And that's one of the reasons why I tried to be a lot smarter about how it would get attached to the wall, because the other one, we had to tie the ropes onto the point at the bottom and pull it out away from the wall to get on the bolts. This one, you can push it. It's a much easier thing to do in a way to push it than to pull it. The one on Maui was really cool because I did a residency for 2 years with middle school kids, talking to them about art and public art, and they were involved in the designing of the public art. They went and measured the site with me, and they drew it up. They learned about scale. They did the interviews with me with the facilities people and the principal. What could we do? What could we not do? So they were involved in the conversation about, well, how should this be arranged? How do we avoid graffiti and vandalism? You guys are the students, you would know better than us. And then I asked them to, over the course of the second year, to engage with trying to figure out what their value system is and what they're really interested in, and then transforming that into the artwork that went into the piece. One of the things that I tell people that are interested in public art is that it takes a heck of a lot of persistence. I think we applied for maybe 100 projects before we got one. And we had several interviews not a ton, but we had several interviews before we got that first one. You get a lot of rejection, but you just have to understand that's part of the game. And I think it really is a matter of understanding what you're after and how it relates to the public. What is the value that you're providing to the public, that it should be public, rather than just something that you're internalizing as a form of art that you want to share. The thing that's really important to understand that we didn't understand for a number of years is that when you don't get selected for something, it's for the right reasons. When you do get selected for something, it's also for the right reasons. The other advice I give is put everything into every project that you do. I do that still 20 years on. This project was a tremendous amount of work and effort. There are always difficulties, always problem solving to take place. It's really important not to take anything lightly. You want to grow and stretch and get better with every single piece and have a bigger impact. And how you do that is by putting everything into it. There's a lot of excellent public artwork in our metropolitan region, but also in other regions. And one of the fun things that we do whenever we travel, we locate where the public art is and we go and we see it, and we learn from that too. People can see more of our artwork. I would first point them to our website, which is collabstudio.com, but also on the municipalities' websites, they usually have an artist list and location of where the artwork is. Collab Studio is also on Instagram, just at Collab Studio LLC, or hashtag Collab Studio will also get you there. We keep everybody up to date with what we're working on and on that platform as well. All of our work is very unique to its place, and that's really where it comes from. The diversity between the pieces is completely based on what it's attached to.